So you just finished building your first drift car and you have your very first drift event coming up, but how do you drive the car? Today we're talking about the basics of drifting and how to make your learning curve as short as it possibly can be. Hello and welcome back to the Cloud Motorsports YouTube channel, your source for open and honest information about the world of drifting. Today we're talking about how to drive your very first drift car, the very basics of drifting if you've never done it before. We're going to try and shorten your learning curve as much as possible by sharing our experience with you. I've brought along our very own resident giraffe, Mr. Chris Anderton Holt, today to help me out and explain the world of drifting to you guys. So Chris and I have been drifting together for several years now, and we both feel confident enough to teach you guys how to get going. Neither of us are experts, but we feel confident that our experience will help you shorten your learning curve. So if you've never had your car sideways before, there's a few things that are going to happen that you probably don't know about. So the very first step is learning how to do donuts. It's actually pretty violent when you kick the clutch for the first time. Everything in your car, your interior, everything shakes. So you have to get through these things before you go out on the track and actually try to send your first drift. Turn the wheel all the way one direction, clutch kick it. The car's going to come out, let it happen. You're gonna feel what it feels like. You're not actually running out of grip. You just have to apply your grip in a different way. So get used to what it feels like just when your car comes out, and that really helps you build your consistency.
So like Wes is talking about, when you clutch kick the car, it is gonna feel a little strange to you, okay? But just let the wheel kind of release the wheel, let it slide where it wants to go, and find that spot where you're at angle but not out of control, and just try to hold that constant circle.
And Chris brings up a really good point here with letting go of the wheel and catching it. When you're first getting going in donuts, a lot of people's tendency is to go hand over hand or try to keep up with the movement of the wheel. You can't do that in the first place, and it's not the correct way to do it. We'll talk about later in another video about car setup, but assuming a car is set up properly, you should have a healthy level of self-steer that allows you to just kick the clutch, let go of the wheel, and catch it at the angle that you want to be at. And so that's going to help you learn that skill to move further on in your drifting. After you can do that reliably over and over and over, we can move on to the next step. Now that you've got a handle on donuts and you've got a consistent feeling of what it feels like to have the car sideways, let's try and translate that skill into forward motion. Initiation. In our opinion, and we did talk about it for a few minutes, the easiest type of initiation is just going to be your standard clutch kick. For a clutch kick initiation, all you really have to do is drive towards the outside of the corner, begin turning in, and right when the weight transfers, just stab the clutch. Literally what it sounds like. You kick the clutch, you let the RPMs come up, and the dumping of the clutch, again, assuming you have a manual transmission vehicle, which you probably should if you're watching this video. When you dump the clutch, it sends a shock load through the drivetrain that breaks the traction of your tires, and that's what initiates the sideways motion and allows your wheel speed to exceed the speed of travel, which must happen if you want to continue a drift.
I was trying to do the clutch kick initiation starting out, and I didn't really understand, like, the kick part actually meant kick it, like he's talking about. You physically have to kick it. So I would go into the corner and I would just kind of hold the clutch in and just kind of rev up and just kind of like let off the clutch.
And like wait for it to like do a burnout in a straight line.
Yeah, and it was like not effective at all. So the whole key is to keep your revs up, like just keep your foot down to the floor almost when you're running up from the straightaway. When you get to that first curve, like he said, just stay on the outside, keep your foot down on the gas and just stab that clutch and you'll break the tires loose and you'll initiate that drift.
He's absolutely right. There's almost no way you can really mess that up. The only problem that you're going to have with that is maybe maintaining the drift, which we're about to talk about. But it really is going to be your easiest way, just like you initiated that donut, just a quick stab of the clutch, just to get the car upset enough to start the drift. You can learn to build on that from there. So basically, we're approaching this whole video as though you're going to attack one corner at a time. You're going to learn how to really perfect that corner, then work on transitions. The second type of initiation that we both consider to be also the second easiest is a handbrake initiation. This does require you to possibly have some aftermarket parts in your car. Some people get by with a factory parking brake, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. You may need to tape your button down so it doesn't get stuck. There's a few things you can do there to make that work, but the actual way that's done is basically the same as the clutch kick, except in place of the clutch kick, you maybe drive a little bit faster, get your forward momentum going, push in the clutch, grab handbrake. So that's a really important step there. You have to clutch in when you grab handbrake. I know some of us have trouble keeping axles together, and that will really impact that. Your entire drivetrain will get stopped, and that's not good. You don't want that because your engine will also get stopped. When everything's connected, it's a whole thing. Push the clutch, please. So you push the clutch, grab the handbrake, you're gonna go sideways. Basically, you just set yourself at angle. That's why I actually think it may be the easiest. at least for my driving style, and with a good strong dual caliper handbrake that just requires like a one pull, one lock. It's just so simple to pull that and get the car at the angle that you want, and then just basically start driving from there. So once you reach the angle that you've achieved, throttle down, hold the steering wheel, throttle down. And again, assuming you have good self-steer, you're able to just grab handbrake, let the wheel spin, catch it at the angle that you want, and continue on your drift.
I will say that I feel like handbraking is a little bit of a step above a clutch kick, because when you're starting out, it may be a little bit confusing for you on what to do with your hands on the entry.
That's
so
fair.
when you grab the handbrake, you have to remember one hand's doing one thing, your foot's doing one thing, and this hand has to control the wheel. Whether you let go of the wheel or whether you just, however you pilot the car, the right way to do it, honestly, would be to just kind of let it slip through your fingers a little bit and let it get to angle where you want it, and then stop the wheel there. And that whole time, you're going to be holding that handbrake. Now, it sounds like it's kind of drawn out, but it happens pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's like a half a second.
Yeah, no time at all. So when you get at the angle, grab the wheel tight, then you can let go of the handbrake and the clutch, get back on the throttle, and you're good to go. But just remember, it might be a step above where you're at if you're just starting out, because you got to do so many things with your hands at the same time.
He brings up a good point, and as long as you're really, really well versed in a manual transmission and you're used to having a hand on the steering wheel and a hand on the shifter, you should be able to translate that skill pretty well. But he's exactly right. There's a lot of things going on. You're very first learning how to drift. Multitasking is one of the hardest parts, because remembering to grab the handbrake and push the clutch in all the way and let it out at the same time, and all of these things, the mechanics are difficult at first, but do not be hard on yourself. We were all there. I was there. He was there. You just have to go through this in order to learn. The final style of initiation that we're going to talk about today is definitely going to be the most difficult for a new driver, but we got to talk about it because it's a very important skill: the feint entry. Basically, the feint entry is a combination of these skills in a way, except you're adding the step of sort of driving the wrong way. You literally want to clutch kick and initiate your drift in the wrong direction so that you can have a snap transition back to the other way.
It should also be noted that after your feint entry, when you kind of initiate the opposite direction like you're talking about, when you get the car going the direction of the turn again, right after that, you can also grab a little bit of handbrake too to set yourself a little deeper in the zone and set yourself up for that initiation. So in a sense, the way you're talking about, it is a little bit of a combination of all the styles thrown together for the initiation.
He's exactly right, and if you look back at the video you just watched, that's exactly how I initiate that drift. I clutch kick the wrong direction, let the car transition, and when it transitioned, it's such a whipping effect. I use that handbrake to just slow myself down just a little bit and really get the car to angle where I want it to be to fill that zone. Again, these are some of the finer mechanics of drifting that you're maybe not ready for yet, but we'll play that clip back just one more time so you can see again what I'm talking about. So now that you got your initiations down and you're comfortable going into the turn, now let's keep you maintaining the drift and keeping your angle around the entirety of that turn. So step one is going to be getting back on throttle very, very quickly after you initiate. A lot of people that I see, and a lot of new drivers, and myself included, was guilty of this. When you initiate, you have a tendency to be a little bit too slow to get back on throttle, and by the time you've done so, your car is already gripped up and you're already straightening out and you're fighting everything. So you've kind of lost that battle. So the important thing is here, commitment, confidence, really hit that initiation and get back on throttle as soon as you can.
Yeah, no, I agree. I've found myself many times where I would initiate it. I find this especially impactful at Beach Bend Raceway, because it's not so much a banked course, and it kind of is a bank, but it has a wall and it can be kind of intimidating to first-time drivers. But when you initiate into that turn, it's made so that if you don't get back on throttle quickly, you just drive straight down the bank and you can't drift the turn. So it's very important to just overcome that fear and just keep your foot down in it as soon as you initiate, and you'll stay up high on that wall, kind of where you need to be.
Right. And also, he's exactly right. When you have a bank track like that, it really changes the dynamic of the car, and getting back on throttle is going to be more important to keep you from crashing than not getting back on throttle. I know that sounds backwards, but the idea of not getting on throttle quickly saving you is wrong. When you do that, if you straighten at the wrong point, you very well can straighten right into the wall.
I actually totaled my car because I didn't get back on throttle at the right time. And instead, I grabbed the handbrake that I thought was the right thing to do. That was totally not the right thing to do. So don't be afraid to get back on the throttle. trust me, it will help you maintain that drift and get your car where it needs to be.
Yeah, it's not always the case, but generally speaking, when in doubt, throttle it out. Now, even if you have perfect throttle control and you're not lacking commitment, your car may be lacking power. You may need to add a few more clutch kicks into the radius of the turn in order to maintain your drift. When you feel yourself starting to bog or starting to slow down, one more quick stab of the clutch should bring the car right back out.
This is especially important for those low-powered guys.
Come on, baby girl.
Let's say that you have your throttle under control. There's no question about that. You are not lacking commitment. You're definitely clutch kicking, but your car is still straightening out. You may have a little bit too much grip for the level of power that you have. So the first thing that you can start to do, raise your tire pressures. Now, I don't mean by like a pound or two. I mean like 10, 15, 20 pounds up above what even the tire sticker says is the manufacturer's maximum recommended. Because when you're drifting, the tire rules are kind of out the window anyway. Now, if all of that fails, you're still not able to get your car to maintain drift around a turn, and you've had a few people verify that you're not lacking commitment. I know as a new driver, it can be easy to tell yourself that you're driving a lot harder than you are. Just ask a more experienced driver than you. Kill your ego for just a little while and do up with the suggestions. I promise you it's going to shorten your learning curve by more than anything else. It's just being open to the suggestions of drivers that have been there ahead of you. If you have adjustable suspension, just a few clicks of your rear dampers in the stiff direction should do the trick if nothing else does.
Don't swap flies in the driver's seat. And what I mean by that is when you initiate that drift and you get back on throttle and you're starting to drift that first corner, don't just flail at the wheel like this. Try to maintain a smooth rotation of the wheel. Just keep your hands loose, but yet firm at the same time. So just keep the wheel where you have the wheels pointed in a straight direction. Don't play a lot with the wheels like this. Don't go hand over hand. You're just going to create bad habits for yourself down the road. So just maintain smooth consistency and you'll get better faster.
And believe me, we're gonna know if you don't listen, because you're gonna be the guy that's turning his headlights on accidentally and turning his wipers on accidentally and cleaning his windshield mid-drift. We know it's not on purpose. Congratulations, you made it through your first turn, but now the second turn is very quickly approaching. What do? This is where transitions come in. Again, this whole video is based on you attacking one section of the track at a time. You pick your first corner to learn, you drift that entire corner, but eventually you're gonna need to transition to the other direction. So in order to do that, your first step is really just going to be kind of the opposite of your initiation. Instead of staying hard on throttle, you're going to gently bleed off in order for your car to start to gain grip in the rear and begin a transition. You will feel it, believe me. It will begin to straighten itself, and as soon as it does, right back on throttle, just like you're initiating all over. Now, you don't want to get back on throttle too aggressively or too soon or too late. There is kind of a perfect spot, and you'll have to find the balance of your car through trial and error and lots of times messing up, and that's okay. Again, get rid of your ego for a while. We've all been there. We're just here to have a good time. Assuming your car is well set up, when you transition, you do the same thing that you did when you initiate. Let go of the wheel. Allow the car to transfer. Catch the wheel again when you're at angle. Do not swap flies. Do not try to follow the wheel. Don't go hand over hand. You can't keep up with it, especially once you start to transition and that wheel starts to spin really fast, as you can see in these examples.
So when you go to transition from that first turn and you let off throttle and you go to that transition, when you get to this point right here, if your car is too gripped up, you might kind of drive straight. If your car is really not gripped up, you might keep sliding out. So you need to drive your car just over and over again and get a feel for that level of grip that your car has. Because not every car is the same, obviously.
He's exactly right, and that goes back to chassis dynamics being so different between cars and driving styles. And all this stuff is going to be stuff that you have to learn. All we're trying to do here is give you guys a framework to get started, to hopefully try and make your first day at the track a more enjoyable experience than it would be if you just went out and tried to figure it out by yourself. And back to what Chris was talking about with those grip levels, you're really shooting for as much grip as you can drive with as you progress in your driving ability. As you want to go faster and as you want to tandem and do all these other finer drift skills, you're going to be increasing that grip. So some of those tire pressures that you maybe have raised before, you're probably going to bring those back down. Some of that suspension that you've stiffened, probably going to soften that back up again. You're actually going to end up chasing grip until you're done drifting. That's just how the way it works. And on the front end of things, it can be tempting to really remove the grip from the car in order to make it easier. But I promise you that's not going to form the correct habits, and that's not going to serve you well as you progress. So hopefully this video has been enough to get you guys going. Again, there's going to be much more about the finer mechanics later on. I'm going to make this a little bit of a series, and we'll talk and try to help you guys through all of the levels of your career all the way into competition if that's where you want to be. I want to remain an open and honest source of information about the world of drifting and hopefully be able to share my experiences with you guys, shorten your learning curves, help you avoid some of the mistakes that I made on the front end, and just make drifting a little bit more fun for everybody. If you have any questions whatsoever, send me a message on Instagram, leave a comment down below. Make sure you subscribe to stay tuned for the further videos and so I can continue teaching you guys everything that I know about drifting. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.